The obsession paradox. Why they chase what pulls away. They don't want you silent. They don't want you distant. They want you desperate. Desperate to be seen. Desperate to be loved. Desperate to be enough. And the moment you stop chasing, everything shifts. The power you thought they had over you, it begins to crack. The control they exercised with crumbs of attention, it vanishes. Because when you stop caring, you stop feeding their ego. And in that vacuum, they obsess. They question, they spiral, they panic. This is Machiavelli's paradox, one of the darkest, most effective laws of psychological control. In today's video, we're going to expose the secret no one wants you to know. Indifference is not weakness, it's warfare. Because in the theater of human relationships, the one who cares less always wins. The psychology behind the chase. You've felt it before. The moment you finally stopped texting first, they texted. The second you stopped checking their story, they posted something that seemed targeted. The day you stopped showing up, they noticed. And that moment wasn't a coincidence. It was a shift in the psychological current. Because the truth is brutal. People don't respond to effort. They respond to its absence. And when you've always been the one trying, explaining, fixing, it's not love they feel. It's security, entitlement, comfort. That changes the instant you remove your energy from the equation. Humans are addicted to attention, but only when it feels scarce. And when you care too loudly, you become background noise. But the moment you pull back, not out of spite, but with silent certainty, something awakens in them. Their anxiety, their curiosity, their need to reclaim the comfort you once gave so freely. And in that space, Machiavelli's principle reveals itself. Emotional control doesn't come from pursuit. It comes from perceived disinterest. You don't have to attack. You don't have to explain. You just have to stop reaching. Strategic indifference, the silent power move. The moment you show restraint, you reveal your leverage. Machiavelli warned that power is never taken. It is given away, often unknowingly, through excessive emotion, reaction, and accessibility. When you constantly express how much you care, you're placing yourself below the other person, offering your attention as tribute. But when you begin to care less, with purpose, not apathy, you shift the narrative. You become the one who must be won over, not the one begging to be noticed. Caring less doesn't mean abandoning empathy. It means controlling your energy. Most people waste their power in emotional overexposure. They announce every thought, every fear, every desire. But those who hold back, who observe before they speak, who feel without announcing, become enigmatic. Mystery is power. When you're no longer an open book, people have no choice but to read between the lines. And that's where obsession begins. Obsession lives in the gaps, not in the pages. Think about the people who've haunted your mind the longest. They weren't always the kindest. They weren't even the most present. But they were unreadable, unpredictable. They gave you just enough to keep you hoping, and then vanished into ambiguity. That is not cruelty. It's influence. And it's the very dynamic Machiavelli embedded in his teachings. The more someone has to work for your attention, the more they value it. The moment it's guaranteed, it's worthless. This paradox plays out in every relationship, romantic, social, even professional. The eager employee is passed over. The always available friend is forgotten. The person who replies instantly becomes invisible, but the one who withdraws strategically becomes magnetic. Why? Because silence creates tension, and tension creates fixation. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding the psychological economy of desire. People chase what eludes them. They overthink what they can't predict. In a world that screams for validation, stillness becomes a weapon. The less you engage, the more you are felt. The less you care out loud, the more they wonder what you're thinking. And it is in that wonder, in that mental loop, they become entangled. Your absence becomes a question mark they can't erase. And if you master this balance, you no longer fight for space in their mind. You occupy it effortlessly. Machiavelli's Code of Control. Machiavelli understood a principle few ever master, that control is not about domination, but about perception. In The Prince, he writes not about brute force, but about illusion. He advises rulers to appear merciful while being ruthless, to seem generous while remaining strategic. Why? Because influence is built on contrast. When you seem distant but offer rare glimpses of warmth, that warmth becomes addictive. You become both the puzzle and the prize. For Machiavelli, the one who reveals too much loses their edge. Transparency is not always a virtue. It's often a weakness. He believed that maintaining mystery wasn't dishonesty, it was protection. A leader, or lover, who is too accessible invites familiarity. And familiarity breeds not trust, but entitlement. Those who always give eventually get ignored. Those who hold back get chased. The Machiavellian paradox is simple. To be desired, you must not desire openly. To command attention, you must withdraw it. Power is not in the act, it's in the reaction you provoke. When your absence causes discomfort, you're in control. When your silence causes anxiety, you've become the force they orbit around. You're not just present, you're psychologically embedded in their internal world. Even in diplomacy, Machiavelli urged the use of absence as a tactic. He admired leaders who played hard to get, not emotionally, but politically. Those who didn't jump at every offer. Those who let others wonder where they stood. That uncertainty, he argued, is what kept enemies at bay and allies respectful. It's not coldness, it's calculation. It's the space where psychological gravity forms. At the core, Machiavelli teaches one unshakable truth. People don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't predict. That fear is the root of obsession. That's why the one who cares less, but acts with intent, ends up being the one remembered. Not because they begged for attention, but because they mastered distance, and let others fill the silence with desire. Make them wonder, not sure. Why is it that when you stop replying, they suddenly check your stories? Why do they reach out only after you pull away? It's not a coincidence, it's biology. Humans are wired to respond to loss. When something slips away, the brain amplifies its value. That's why your indifference creates their obsession. You're not being rude, you're becoming rare. And rarity always commands more attention than effort. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you truly wanted something that was handed to you easily? It's the unavailable, the slightly distant, the semi-detached that pull us in. When you pull back, you force others to lean forward. You trigger a hunt. And in that hunt, their emotional investment deepens. It's not what you offer, it's what you withhold that creates desire. Think of how people chase status, approval, love. The moment they sense it slipping, they panic. They fight to regain what they didn't value when it was abundant. That's the psychological paradox Machiavelli exploited. The more you withhold, not out of malice, but out of intention, the more others assign you value. You become not a person, but an idea they can't control. But here's the twist. The moment you start to chase them again, the spell breaks. They stop wondering. They stop craving. Certainty kills curiosity. And in that death, attention shifts. The only way to hold their mind is to leave a gap, one they desperately want to close, but can't. That gap is where your power grows. It's not silence. It's strategic absence. So, what if you started to move differently? What if you stopped explaining, stopped chasing, stopped apologizing for being unavailable? What if you let the silence speak for you? The mind fills in what you don't say, and what it fills in is often more powerful than anything you could have said. This isn't about games. This is about psychological design. And most people are completely unaware they're being pulled in. How indifference haunts the mind. Indifference, when intentional, is not just coldness. It's control. It creates a psychological vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum. When you pull away emotionally, the other person's mind scrambles to fill the space. They replay conversations. They analyze your tone. They build theories. All because your presence has been replaced by mystery, and mystery always haunts longer than memory. This haunting effect isn't subtle. It grows over time. The longer you remain distant, the more intense the emotional response becomes. They'll tell themselves they don't care, but they'll keep checking, keep waiting, keep wondering. Your silence becomes louder than their need for distraction, and when that happens, you've already taken space inside their subconscious. Most people crave emotional certainty. When you deny them that certainty, not through cruelty but through strategic presence, you force their mind into obsession loops. They begin to attach meaning to every small thing you do or don't do. Every glance, every pause, every unread message becomes a symbol, and symbols are powerful. They last longer than attention. The real twist is this: obsession is not about love, it's about the inability to control. When someone can't predict you, can't reach you, can't lock you in, they grow anxious. And anxious attachment feeds compulsion. They don't want you, they want to conquer you. But by staying just out of reach, you maintain the upper hand because you're not playing the same game. Machiavelli would call this an invisible throne. You sit above the drama, untouched, while others chase the idea of winning you over. And the more indifferent you appear, the more they invest. Because the human brain is cruelly logical. The harder it is to win something, the more it believes that thing must be valuable. And that's when you become unforgettable, not because you begged for attention, but because you never needed it. Mastering the balance. Be the one they can't ignore. So here's the truth most won't admit. The less you care, the more they crave. Not because you're heartless, but because you're scarce. And in a world addicted to availability, scarcity is seductive. People don't obsess over what they can reach. They obsess over what they can't predict, can't control, can't fully understand. When you stop needing to be liked, you start becoming unforgettable. This isn't about playing games. It's about mastering energy. About understanding that attention chases power, and power belongs to those who don't beg for it. Machiavelli didn't teach cruelty. He taught clarity. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, you start choosing. And that shift doesn't just change the dynamic, it rewrites the entire story. So let them wonder. Let them chase. Let them spiral into obsession while you remain still, grounded, and quietly untouchable. Because when you stop chasing, everything you once wanted begins to come to you. Not as a reward, but as a reaction. That's the paradox. That's the power.